Regina Mysliborski. I worked at the retreat for 10 years. I was a counselor for 6 of those years and the director of counseling for the last 4 years that I was there. I just recently left to start a private practice, but I still have a lot of connection to the retreat.
Yay, thank you. Okay. All right, so what we're going to be talking about today is some of the dynamics of abuse and what that looks like, particularly among young adults, right? So sometimes we talk about, sometimes people think about abuse and they think like older married couples and it's primarily physical abuse, but we definitely want to talk about young adults and the other types of abuse as well.
Right.
So we have some questions actually from our team leaders in the past.
Okay.
And so we're going to kind of lead off a little bit of that today. And maybe just starting with some warning signs that you see and that you've seen as a counselor among teens while working at the retreat, or not even now, you know.
Yeah, just in life, really. I mean,
Yeah.
now it's funny because now you definitely, after working for 10 years in domestic violence, you know, I do see red flags, and, you know, I'm kind of maybe hyper aware, but also I can see the difference between, you know, an unhealthy relationship, a healthy relationship, an abusive relationship, because also with, I think, one of the myths that, and you had just said, you know, physical abuse is always really what people think of for domestic violence, that, you know, physical abuse, you know, broken bones, black eyes, bruises is what identifies domestic violence. And I thought that too, until I did it for 10 years. And truthfully, you know, we did see it obviously, but emotional, verbal, financial, sexual, there's so many different nuances of abuse. And the overall umbrella is about power and control. One person wanting to have control over another person, and they'll do it in whatever way that they can. You know, oftentimes the physical abuse is something that occurs really late into the relationship. It starts slowly with the emotional, with the verbal, you know, just financial, more so in adults, I think, the financial abuse, but, you know, you see that in young adults as well, and in, you know, adolescents. But I just wanted to kind of share that about the myth of physical abuse being what domestic violence is.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like before I worked at the retreat, I didn't really know a ton either. So I totally understand that misconception a little bit, that is primarily what it is. Why do you think some of these other signs are also so damaging and challenging, these other types of abuse, like emotional abuse and verbal abuse? And what are some of the specific things that you see among young adults?
Right. Well, so for the emotional abuse and the physical, the emotional abuse and the verbal abuse, and I would say that is oftentimes what we see mainly with the young adults. It's really about intimidation, manipulation, playing on another person's feelings. They're, you know, feeling guilty. Oftentimes in the beginning of a relationship that's unhealthy, all of these signs look like somebody who loves them. You know, the wanting to always be in contact, wanting to be together all the time, maybe suggesting a different outfit because it might look better, asking somebody to always, you know, break plans with friends or family to spend time with the abusive partner. All of these different things, the texting all the time, the good mornings, the good morning text, the good night text, the where are you text. The biggest thing too is the tracking, you know, the snap maps and watching what somebody is doing. And I think there's some other apps too that, you know, the kids definitely use. I'm not so good at that stuff, but, you know, and the thing that I feel happens a lot of times in the young adult relationships is all of these characteristics look like love. They look like, oh, this person's so into me. They really want to be with me. And by the time it starts getting a little uncomfortable, they're fully vested. They're vested in this relationship. And then when they start to maybe see that this isn't so healthy and they want to move away, that's when, you know, the manipulation and the intimidation come in, and the guilt, and sometimes the gaslighting. So the guilt being like, oh, you don't love me anymore, you don't want to be with me. Sometimes it's threats from the other part, the other partner, like, I'm going to harm myself, or I'm going to, send out pictures that we took. I'm going to let everybody know, what kind of person you really are. So what looked like love now looks like control and power. When somebody is consistently doing things that are, unequal, unfair, unkind. And again, typically doesn't start out that way. And it just slowly, happens as, the relationship evolves. But once that abusive partner realize, like feels that they have what they're looking for, like has that person controlled, or, then it becomes a pattern. And even the cycle of abuse is a pattern. Like if you keep doing it over and over and over again, that's a pattern of behavior. Honestly, the cycle is used as a manipulation in a way. So, oh, I'm just going to say, I'm sorry, just come right back, So that's a really good point with the characteristics of a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship. I mean, we don't always agree. We don't always have positive communication. We argue, everybody argues. So what is healthy arguing and what is unhealthy arguing? What is being controlled and what is having differing opinions? That's the continuum of those behaviors. Very damaging to teens because it's, during adolescence, that's where we're, really developing our sense of autonomy, our sense of self, our self-esteem. And to have somebody to constantly, criticizing you, telling you you're wrong, telling you to do it differently, gaslighting you, telling you you're crazy, that affects your self-esteem. I mean, it affects anybody's self-esteem, but it definitely, especially during adolescence, when you're really starting to form the autonomy from your family of origin now to adulthood. And in that developmental stage, you have somebody, who's, not really fostering it, but is really trying to keep you down. So that can be very damaging.
I'm learning some things too. Very well said. I feel like you said a couple different things and I don't want to forget it, but one of them was when somebody starts to pull away, that's when a lot of like the intimidation and maybe threats and manipulation starts to get maybe a little bit more intense, if I heard that correctly. Yeah. Which I feel like a lot of students that we work with may think like, oh, well, if you start to see that, like, just break up with them. Like if you start to see that. And I feel like what you said is that it can get really tricky when that starts to happen, when you're trying to leave a relationship. I wonder if you could speak on that a little bit.
Right. Well, it's funny that you say that as, like, oh, the friends and the family all say, oh, just leave. Why aren't they just leaving? That's one of the things that in the counseling department, especially that we dealt with a lot, is our clients, their family, their friends, our adult clients, their family, their friends are all like, just leave. Why aren't you just leaving? But not understanding what the dynamics of a relationship based on power and control are. So there's not a balance there. There's not an equal communication. There's, somebody wants to make sure somebody's doing what they want. And if they can't, if they feel that they're losing that control, such as somebody says, oh, I'm not sure about this relationship, they become it becomes more intense and the abuse escalates. And it can escalate to a point where somebody feels again that they're going to be harmed, the other person's going to harm themselves, or they're going to be outed from their social group. Now that maybe they do have a social group and now they'll be the one who doesn't have any friends anymore, or they'll be walking the halls of school and everybody will be talking about them and making fun of them and having negative things to say about them because the other partner is, talking bad about them, usually lying, but it doesn't matter because unfortunately negativity, breeds interest. And so it can become very uncomfortable. The other thing that can happen too in adolescent relationships is families can become involved. You can really get to know the other partner's family, or the other partner might really get to know your family. I had one client a few years ago whose abuser, and we'll use the word abuser, lived with them. even though they were, young adults, he had a difficult family of origin and he was having a tough time. So he moved in with his partner's family. And, when it became obvious that it was very unhealthy and then was abusive, it was really difficult to, disengage from not just the relationship, but from the family relationship as well. So there's a lot, there can be a lot to trying to leave an abusive relationship. Important for people to know that, like, these relationships, the unhealthy relationships aren't just every day it's awful. It can be, but not, again, other people ask, why don't you just leave? Because there are good times. So there is a specific cycle that we see often. I mean, not always, but often in abuse. Can't actually remember exactly what it's called, but I call it walking on eggshells.
Mm.
So, this we'll talk about walking on eggshells to begin the cycle of abuse. So walking on eggshells is when you don't feel that you can be yourself, that you're always worried about the other partner, getting angry, having a blow up, being frustrated with you. This is where a lot of the verbal abuse will come in, a lot of the emotional, make you feel bad. So you're just basically waiting for the ball to drop. You're waiting for something to happen. You're waiting for the blow up. And then the blow up happens. And it can be anywhere from, this is where oftentimes, if physical abuse is part of the relationship, it's a physical altercation, or it's just, a really horrific verbal altercation. It could be, a dramatic breakup. It could be, just some type of emotionally traumatic blow up. And after that is where most people are like, well, just be done, just enough already. And then the abusive partner will come back and, apologizing, promising it'll never happen again, doing anything they can for, the partner, and just making the relationship what the victim, or, the non-abusive partner always wanted it to be. And that, this cycle can last a day, it can last a week, it can happen a couple times in a day, and it really all just, it just depends. Oftentimes I would say with adolescent relationships, it's something that, the honeymoon phase will last a while, will last at least, a week and a half. The walking on eggshells, lasts a little while too, until like the blow up. So, but there's typically a cycle, and that's typically why another reason why it's very difficult for somebody to just walk away from a relationship.
So I feel like one of the things that our teens are also wondering was, so then what does it look like to get that person help? I know that you said, as a counselor at the retreat for many years, you have become really skilled in seeing healthy, unhealthy, abusive. So what does counseling look like? What does reaching out for help look like? One of the questions that our teens asked is therapy for everyone? If not, what's an alternative, and how could you encourage someone to get help or counseling, or, with the retreat or elsewhere? So can you just talk a little bit about what help looks like, what counseling looks like with the retreat or not,
Right. Well, I actually think for, a young adult, for an adolescent, I think the first step, I think calling a hotline or calling an agency takes a lot. I mean, it takes a lot of strength and, and just putting yourself out there. I think the first step is to find somebody a little closer to home that they feel that they can be, that's a confidant, that they feel they can talk to, that will, listen to them and will support them, guide them, and, try to just be, to give that person somebody to go to, really. That's what a counselor does. But again, the idea of a counselor is a lot different than the idea of, say, a favorite teacher, or, a family member, a friend, or even like a friend's mom, or, sometimes it's nice to find somebody that you're already comfortable with, that you can talk to. Maybe somebody who works in the teen leaders, like just having that conversation, and that person can help you with the process to get help via the retreat or an agency. One of the things that we did do is that we gave a direct line to me as the director of counseling to an adolescent, as opposed to going calling the 329-2200 hotline, because it's a little more personal to talk to somebody, immediately say, hi, I'm looking for so and so, instead of calling a hotline and talking to, we have a lot of hotline advocates, and and sharing the story with somebody, and then having to wait for a phone call back from somebody else, and then having to share the story with somebody else. So that is very helpful to have sort of a direct connection that, somebody can help you make that connection with. And counseling at the retreat, it's really about listening. It's really about listening to what your experience has been like. I mean, everybody's experience is different. And, we talk about these are the dynamics of abuse. This is the cycle of abuse, but everybody experiences differently. So, we have a lot of experience, use that word experience a lot, but we have a lot of experience with all different types of incidences and what a person is. We meet the person where they're at. We have clients who come to us who don't even want to leave the relationship. They want to know, how do I stay in the relationship? So we also do a lot of education. Like, what does abuse look like? I'm sorry, I didn't know what it looked like until I worked at the retreat. I really didn't. So there's a lot of different resources that you can get from the retreat. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be an intense experience where you have to share everything. It's just, what can we do for you? The retreat is so great about, because with all of the services that the retreat provides in every aspect of what a person's trying to do, getting out of an abusive relationship, it just provides, hope to be so supported in every aspect of your growth and of your change and of getting out of that relationship, between, having the shelter, having counseling, having, legal advocacy, now having a lawyer, case management. I mean, it's just, it really, financial empowerment, the retreat does an amazing job of really instilling hope in our clients. Thank you so much for reaching out to me and asking me to do this, because I will do this anytime.
I was gonna say, well, if you really, I'll keep bringing you back, Regina.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll do it anytime.